Welcome back to the Highland Park Update. My name is Matthew Hirsch. I chair the Public Information Committee here in Highland Park. It's November 15th, 2015, and today we are thrilled to have Councilman Josh Fine as our special guest today. Councilman Fine was elected to Borough Council in 2014, and he was sworn in January 1st, 2015. So I just wanted to go through your portfolio assignment. You, as councilperson, are liaison to the Board of Health, Human Relations Committee, at the Highland Park Housing Authority, and Health and Human Services Committee, which oversees the Mayor's Wellness Program, the Commission for Universal Access, Food Pantry, and the Library. So that's a lot.
Yes.
And I would imagine as a council person, it gives you a very broad perspective over what's going on in town and how people interact with not only these portfolios, but the institutions that they oversee on a day-to-day basis. Can you just tell me a little bit about your first year in office and how you've grown as a council person?
Well, thank you, Matt. Well, first I would say that the most important thing that I have come to learn over the course of 2015 is that there are tremendous volunteers who are dedicated to enhance the quality of life in our borough. And I've had an opportunity to work with a number of them through the commissions and boards I'm a liaison to. One of the things the boards and commissions that I've worked with have tried to do is to make sure that there's communication with a number of the different entities in town. So for example, this year the borough code was, we worked to change and amend the borough code so that the Highland Park Board of Health has a liaison from the school board, because there were a number of issues that were coming up school related, and we wanted to have that communication. And the same thing goes for the Human Relations Commission. There's now a liaison to the school board, from the school board to the Human Relations Commission, as well as a liaison from the Highland Park Police Department. So we've really worked to get better communication going throughout the borough. There's specific items which we've worked on. I guess I'll start with the Board of Health. One of the bigger issues that was worked on at the beginning of 2015 was the introduction of an ordinance to ban the sale of tobacco and electronic smoking devices to people under 21, and that's something that originated with the Board of Health, came through the Human and Health Services Committee, and ultimately the council decided to adopt that ordinance, and that's something which has been implemented throughout the borough with the help of our Middlesex County Health Inspector, it's a shared service that Highland Park has with Middlesex County. Susan Gross, the inspector, has gone throughout the borough to communicate the information about the ordinance and the regulations to the different stores that are in the business of selling cigarettes and electronic smoking devices. The other thing that the Highland Park Board of Health was working on, and I mentioned this before, was regarding school-related issues. There were two resolutions which the Highland Park Board of Health worked on I would say over the summer of 2015. Number one was a resolution regarding school start times, where there was a recommendation that school should start no earlier than 8:30 a.m. And the second resolution was regarding the amount of physical activity that should have to go on within the school district on a weekly basis, being 225 minutes. Those were recommendations that the Highland Park Board of Health has put together, and they've even invited the new superintendent, Dr. Scott Taylor, to come to a meeting, in addition to the liaison from the Board of Ed. I believe it's the December meeting, so they can have that communication and see how they can work going forward.
That's great. You know, things like school start time, and even physical activity, but those are areas that affect people on a daily basis, and they affect people's schedules, and those are areas that would have broad impact. What do you take into consideration when and I know that these issues were vetted, and there's data to back these up, and please feel free to talk about kind of what led you to make these decisions. But when you're considering these things, how do you consider the impact on the resident?
Right. So two things. One is that the Board of Health looked to a study that was put together by the American Pediatrics Association regarding school start times. Obviously, when it comes to the impact that it can have on residents, parents of children in the school district, that's something which the Board of Health is hoping that they'll be able to work with the school board to come to a resolution and to basically work on the issue to take into account those concerns that the parents might have. Obviously, people do work and have schedules too, and taking that into account at the same time, trying to make it a better situation for students so that they can be in the best learning environment possible.
That's great. And just so people understand that these policy decisions are not made in a vacuum. There are other communities who are doing similar things too.
Yes, and even on the state level, one thing that's taken place. There's a bill that hasn't been approved yet, but there is a bill in the Assembly right now, New Jersey State Assembly, that would call for a study of the effects of such a policy being implemented, and taking into account all the different considerations. But there are local districts, local municipalities throughout New Jersey that are at least considering this by themselves.
That's great. I wanted to just touch a little bit more on something that you talked about earlier, was kind of crossing silos and developing interagency collaboration. Particularly with the schools, but other agencies that command a large budgetary presence in town. It makes a lot of sense, it seems, to be able to make decisions comprehensively, and not piecemeal. Are there a few examples of kind of what has come out of these relationships being born in the last year, or that you've been able to observe?
Sure. So I would look as an example to the Human Relations Commission. One of the important issues that's been going on really throughout America is the relationship that community residents have with their local law enforcement.
Right.
And one of the great things that took place this year, number one, is the council decided to amend the borough code to put a police department liaison to the Human Relations Commission.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, we're able to work along with the Public Safety Committee, which is chaired by my fellow council member Elsie Foster Dublin, to put together a town forum between community residents and the Highland Park local law enforcement, so that there would be, again, a chance to enhance the communication between residents and local law enforcement, and to really find out some of the important steps that the police are taking in Highland Park to make sure that some of the issues we've seen going on around the country will not happen here.
We are very socially conscious people in Highland Park, and you see places of houses of worship taking leadership roles in doing advocacy work on national and global events. But we do a lot here in town locally just to improve relationships among each other. I did want to talk about just going on, building relationships with the police and how that's part of a national discussion that we are addressing locally. One of the things that the Human Relations did recently was develop a task force discussing, and in light of what's happened in Paris a couple of days ago, has developed a task force looking at a day of discussion. Can you tell me a little bit more about this?
Sure. It's really an idea that was brought to the attention of the Human Relations Commission by Greg Trevor. He's I believe, the editor of Rutgers Today. He also is a 9/11 survivor. He was working down in that area on 9/11 2001. And he came to the Human Relations Commission and asked the commission, and along with its chair, Ashton Burrell, to see if we could create a task force, an annual 9/11 Day of Discussion task force, with the purpose being that Mr. Trevor felt that we're already a number of years away from the September 11, 2001, worst terrorist attacks in American history. And he felt that people were beginning to lose perspective, and also it was a time right after 9/11, 2001, where Americans came together. And he felt that it would be very important, and Highland Park could start the initiative with the hopes that it will expand on a national level, to make sure that on 9/11 there would be a day of discussion, and a task force would come together to figure out a way to honor American heroes and discuss important issues on a community-wide basis, and figure out a way to deal, across the board, whether it be cultural or religious, the political divides, to come together to have an important discussion for the 15th anniversary, or beginning of the 15th anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, which will be on September 11th, 2016. So that task force was put together. It's being chaired by Greg Trevor and his wife, Allison Salerno. And I'll just put out a plug for this, that he, if anyone's interested in the initiative, any Highland Park resident obviously is welcome to ask to join the task force. Just send an email to gtrevor, G-T-R-E-V-O-R, 1964 @gmail.com, because we would really like to have as many residents involved as possible.
It's terrific. And he's written beautifully on the subject too. So I would suggest anybody to check that out. And in that vein, you're overseeing several community building events coming up. Maybe can you give a few examples of what we can expect in the next month or two?
Sure. I would say the first event is going to be on January 18th, 2016, which is Martin Luther King Day. In the past, the Human Relations Commission has put together a very nice event, usually starting around 7 o'clock, but it's been at the Highland Park Senior Youth Center in the past, and it's grown over the course of the past couple of years. And this year, it's going to be in the Highland Park High School Auditorium, something again where it was worked out with our new superintendent, and it's going to be at 7 p.m. And hopefully, the keynote speaker this year is going to be Sarah Collins Rudolph, who is the fifth girl from the Alabama church bombing in 1963,
wow,
who survived, and she's made it known that she's available to come in and be the keynote speaker. And even though it has not been voted upon yet by the Human Relations Commission, each year there is a humanitarian award that is given out to recognize someone on the local level who's done a lot for social justice in our community.
That's terrific. Thank you for mentioning that, and stay tuned to the Highland Park e-News for dates and times for that in the coming months.
There is a program that I worked on along with Council President Susie Welkowitz, the Bartle School Principal Anthony Benjamin, and Lower School Director from the Rabbi Pesach Rabbi Yeshiva Chaya Friedman, to have a joint environmental program for second graders at the Bartle School and RPRY. And this past May, we had the Raritan River Keeper, Bill Schultz, come in on one Friday to both the Bartle School, and then he went to RPRY, and he basically gave an hour class about the precious natural resource we have in our backyard, the Raritan River. And then the following Friday, the second graders from both schools got together down at Donaldson Park and had a scavenger hunt that was planned by staff from both schools. And it served for environmental education purposes, but also really another community building event that was important, and the hope is that it'll be an annual program.
That was a terrific program, and it was a chance. It was not only an educational experience, but it was also a chance for students and teachers to interact with each other in a way that they may have not before. And in a small town, stuff like that seems particularly important. So that was crossing silos and bringing community together. I wanted to go back a little bit to the Board of Health, because we were talking about that. We were talking about Board of Health a little bit before we started. The Board of Health has health and wellness is obviously a big quality of life priority in Highland Park, and we talked about the cigarette ordinance. That was passed earlier this year. Can you give me a little bit, tell us a little bit more about how the Board of Health operates, and particularly its ability to develop public health policy, sure, and maybe what some of the things that we can expect to see coming down the pike.
Sure. So the Board of Health meets about once a month and is made up of about I believe 7 members, including 2 student representatives from the school district, and it works to make sure that Highland Park residents are informed about public health concerns, whether it be spraying for mosquitoes locally, it could be in one of the local parks, whether it be issues involving heating in buildings. There's a report giving at each Highland Park Board of Health meeting by our health inspector, Sue Gross. So we hear about resident complaints on a monthly basis and how they were taken care of. Also importantly, food establishments, and including the kitchens in the school district, are inspected by Susan Gross, our health inspector, and we get reports on that with different level ratings. So those are important things. As you mentioned, the Board of Health does have the ability, statutory ability, to pass its own ordinances. You can find some of those ordinances and resolutions on its website, and which you could find through the Highland Park Borough website. So, for example, back in the beginning of 2015, the Board of Health decided that for enforcement purposes, it would be best to recommend to the council to introduce the ordinance banning the sale of tobacco and electronic smoking devices to people under 21, and that was the route they chose. They're looking now at possibly adopting an ordinance that would basically allow for electronic cigarette licensing fees to be implemented in Highland Park for those 12 stores that sell e-cigarettes here in the borough, and it looks as though for now that the Board of Health will like to do that. But as we discussed earlier on, the commitment to communication and working with different the interagency collaboration, Main Street HP has always reached out to get a sense of where businesses stand on particular issues, ordinances that are being considered. The council is conferred with as well. So even though the Board of Health has the ability to pass its own ordinance, they don't just do everything in their own silo. Right. They make sure to reach out as well. Right. So that's something. The other thing is that when it comes to health and wellness, in general, they work along with the Mayor's Wellness Campaign as well, which is another entity that I'm a liaison to. And they have a representative who sits on the Mayor's Wellness Campaign, and one of the projects that the Mayor's Wellness Campaign is working on hopefully will happen in the next few months, and it's been worked on for most of 2015, is to enable for Highland Park to become the first heart-safe municipality in New Jersey. In order to do that, to be part of the Heart Safe project, which different communities, college campuses, different cities across America have taken on, we needed to make sure that there were defibrillators in key places throughout the borough, whether it be municipal buildings, whether it be houses of worship, central locations throughout the borough, and also to make sure that we have a sufficient number of certified individuals who are certified in CPR. And we've worked the Mayor's Wellness Campaign with the leadership of Dr. Clifton Lacey, along with the mayor. We've worked to put together an inventory of defibrillators in town, and also the number and the entities that have individuals who are certified in CPR. And the hope is that in the next 2-3 months, we'll actually be able to meet the necessary criteria to become the first heart-safe municipality in New Jersey. And then just in general, just to conclude in terms of the Board of Health, just recently, this past Friday on November 13th, we had a World Pancreatic Cancer Awareness event right outside the Main Street HP building. On November 10th, the council had a proclamation really to promote awareness about pancreatic cancer. And the interesting thing with pancreatic cancer is that I think there's 7% 5-year survival rate. We are blessed to have in our borough a resident who is 7 years past being diagnosed. His name is Franco Jurisic, and he brought this idea
Right.
to the council, to the Board of Health, and arranged to make sure that on November 13th, our local stores on Raritan in the downtown area have purple ribbons. And it's really important, and it's, first of all, number one, it's great when a resident brings up an issue that we can take action on.
Mm-hmm.
But as Mr. Jurisic explained to me, unfortunately, because there are so few survivors of pancreatic cancer, when it comes to advocacy on their behalf, there are few people who are actually doing that. He mentioned to me that maybe 2,500 people go down, and these are survivors and the family members who go down each year to Washington, D.C. But in general, he said studies have shown that where there's funding and where there's advocacy, the rates of survival for different diseases go up. And so we were happy to be able to do something in Highland Park to help the effort to wage hope against pancreatic.
That's terrific, and I was at the Borough Council meeting where he presented, and he was certainly inspirational. It's amazing, and I just wanted to note too that we had talked about being able to create health-related policy here in town, but that what's exciting to me is that it can also impact regional public health policy. So you talked about the ordinance, the under 21 ordinance for cigarettes, and now you tell me that you can report that Edison and New Brunswick are considering similar ordinances.
So I wouldn't say they're considering them yet,
Right.
but what the Highland Park Board of Health has resolved is there is going to be communication and reaching out through correspondence and through phone calls to New Brunswick and to Edison, to their municipal governments, because interestingly, not every municipality has a Board of Health.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes it's the council that ends up making the health policy. We're blessed, I think, to have a Board of Health to focus on that here in Highland Park. But the idea is that I think there are about 9 municipalities now that have passed the under 21 smoking ordinance, and we think first of all, it will hopefully get out by encouraging other municipalities, surrounding municipalities. It's better for the health of our residents, but also will hopefully move it so that it's move this issue to the state level,
right,
so that we can have state legislation.
Well, we've led the way before in matters of policy, and I'm sure that we will again related to this. Councilman Fine, that is all I have to ask. Is there anything that you'd like to add?
I'd just like to add one thing,
Sure.
if it's okay.
Yeah, of course.
The one other entity that I'm a liaison to that I thought I'd mention a couple of things about is the Highland Park Community Food Pantry. For 8 years, Beth Leach served as the chair of the Highland Park Food Pantry, and it's an amazing organization. I don't know how many Highland Park residents are aware of just how amazing an organization it is. The food pantry, well, I guess unfortunately has grown. Its services have grown because of the need, but fortunately we have some really dedicated volunteers, over 50, that each week make sure that we have pickup of food that's been donated, shelving, so that when people who need to use the food pantry can come in, they can do it with a sense of dignity, and also then distribution. Distributions happen on the 2nd and 4th Thursdays of each month from 9 to 10:45 a.m. and from 6 to 7 p.m. And then also Saturdays, the same weeks, from about 9 to 10 a.m. In the morning. Each year, over the past couple of years, the food pantry gives out nearly 10,000 bags of food to over 300 families in Highland Park. And just this year, at the beginning of the year, there was some new space that was newly constructed at the Highland Park Senior Youth Center to help the food pantry because its needs have grown. And also, Beth Leach, after 8 years of doing an unbelievable job, passed the baton on to Janice Ballew, and really there was a restructuring. There's an organizational structure for all these volunteers who are doing this incredible job. So it's something which, again, people are interested in getting involved in. It's always, I would say that we have a lot of volunteers in Highland Park, and I always think back to a volunteer who I know who was very involved in Highland Park for many years, who unfortunately passed away this past year. His name was Nate Siegel. And I remember he was honored as a Highland Park Borough Hero in late 2014, and I was happy the council was able to do that before he unfortunately passed away. But he said something which I think was very telling, and he said, we could all imagine what our property taxes would be like if they were even higher if we didn't have the volunteers that we have. So it's very special, the number of volunteers that we have and the things they do, and I would just encourage all Highland Park residents to get more involved.
And that's terrific. Yeah, he was a wonderful volunteer. Can you tell, and with the holidays coming up, the work of the food pantry is always important, but is probably more, its importance is more pronounced perhaps in the coming months. Can you let people know how they can donate, or how they can, or what they can do at home? You know?
Any resident that's interested in volunteering for the food pantry, I'd encourage them to do so, and to contact Janice Balu, who's the chair of the food pantry. And especially at this time of year, before the year concludes, if you are interested in making a donation to the food pantry, please feel free to contact Janice Balu as well.
That's terrific. Well, Councilman Josh Vine, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. It sounds like it's been a great first year, and certainly look forward to your work in the coming years and getting updates on this important work. This concludes another edition of the Highland Park Update. Again, I'm Matthew Hirsch, Chair of the Public Information Committee, and I just wanted to give a special thanks to Gary Leslie and Donnie Sinoff of Highland Park Television, without whom this cannot happen. So also support your local public access as well on Cablevision Channel 15 and Verizon Fios Channel 44. Visit the Highland Park Borough at www.hpborough.com. Visit us on Facebook at facebook.com/HPBorough, and we're also on Twitter and Instagram. Thank you so much.